Protein bars are very hard to sell. So as an emerging brand, it's really hard to carve out space for yourself. We made a very clear decision of any channel we enter into has to be profitable. We have to make money.
Michelle Razavi was working 16-hour days and couldn't find a protein snack her body could actually handle. So she created her own. She launched Elavi to fill the gap for clean, gut-friendly, low-sugar snacks and scaled it into a fast-growing brand that's now sold in Costco, Whole Foods, and other major national retailers. Today, Elavi is redefining what better-for-you indulgence looks like for a new generation of consumers.
I think a lot of founders struggle with an attachment that they feel to their products as if they're children. But at the end of the day, we have to run a business. We were at that time bringing on some great advisors, and he was just like, and you're wasting your resources and spreading yourselves too thin, cut the line.
Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming. I can't believe we've known each other ever since the beginning of Elavi. That's so amazing.
Yeah, you're an OG that got to see us through the entire journey. So this is very exciting to come on here and share our story with you.
Well, take me back to that original part. I mean, you were working kind of 16-hour days, Sephora by night, Equinox. I mean, Sephora by day, Equinox by night. What was actually driving you to maintain that pace, and how did you even think about squeezing in and starting a CPG company?
I mean, like most stories, these things weren't planned. They kind of just happen. I didn't expect to ever be a CPG founder, but usually most entrepreneurship stories start with a problem, and that's my story. So I was working full-time corporate job at Sephora in San Francisco and teaching full-time, and I'm teaching part-time at Equinox as well. And working these long days, I needed snacks that could fuel me. And unfortunately, a lot of the protein snacks that were in the cafes upset my stomach because they had sugar alcohols or dairy or just synthetic artificial ingredients that my body couldn't digest. And I started creating my own products at my house. Sometimes I'd forget them, and I kept thinking, oh, I wish I could just buy this out in the wild. At the same time, I think timing has a lot to do with my story too, of I was just feeling underfulfilled in my job. I was debating getting an MBA or going back to school for a graduate degree. And I was always passionate about health and wellness. And something inside of me, I think it was just being in San Francisco in that very great energy of startups and entrepreneurship, where I was like, why don't I just see if I can create this product on my own and bring it to market? And I didn't know what I know now, but I think that kind of served me in that I kept going one step after the next, not knowing, how difficult it is to bring a product to market. And, it's been a 6-year journey. So we launched January 2020 with my co-founder, Nikki, and we started with one product line. And over the years, we've iterated, launched new product lines, discontinued our original product line, and we've now landed at this incredible hero product line of protein brownies that are absolutely killing it in massive dream retailers like Costco and Whole Foods, HEB, and more. And it's just such an exciting journey to be on and to continue being on.
So tell me a little bit about what were part of the problem that you were kind of experiencing when it came to actually protein bars itself, or maybe even like the protein space for you as someone who fitness is a very high priority for.
Yeah. So I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't do dairy. And unfortunately, a lot of the protein bars had dairy in them. I also didn't want any added sugars, but I also didn't want sugar alcohol. So you had to either choose between something that was, sweetened with sugar alcohols like erythritol or allulose or things that upset the stomach but were low glycemic, or you go for refined sugars that were easier to digest but caused a blood sugar spike. And not many products were sweetening their products with honey or dates or coconut sugar, ingredients that now you're starting to see in more products, but back then there weren't any of those. It was either sacrifice taste or sacrifice your stomach. And so it was really trying to create a product that was delicious, that had a great source of plant protein that I could digest and wouldn't weigh me down or feel like a brick in my stomach. And fortunately, in the protein bar snack set, not a lot of products are made with the design for people with sensitive stomachs, but also just for women who don't want to feel very heavy. I call it the protein set for a reason, right? A lot of them are created by men. And so they're not thinking about the female consumer who has a more sensitive stomach or who is more conscious about the ingredients. And that's who we're catering to and who we're doubling down and seeing a lot of success with.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And that makes a ton of sense. So you launched in January 2020. Of course, 2020, in March, COVID hits.
Yep.
What was it? Tell me a little bit about what your initial launch strategy was,
Mhm.
how you had to pivot,
Yeah.
and what it was like being a new brand when you actually couldn't have any opportunity to sample.
Yeah, that was, looking back, such a difficult time because you don't know how long that was gonna last. You thought it was gonna be a couple weeks, but we originally were planning to be in the gyms and fitness studios. That was the genesis of how the product got started. We were hoping to be at events. We were hoping to be out in the field sampling to consumers, and we were stripped away from all of that in our first year, which is such an instrumental year to gather data, meet your consumer face to face, get their feedback. And we, of course, had online, and that was a great opportunity to connect with our consumers on a larger scale from not being limited to a geographic location. But nothing beats the in-person tasting of being able to meet with consumers and get their feedback in a more qualitative way. And so we pivoted to selling online, and that was a great time for CPG. A lot of food and beverage brands did well during 2020, but at the same time, you're lacking that experiential opportunity to build a moment around your product, right? It's not as transactional. And so, we did great with our collagen protein bar line and held that for a couple years, got into some great distribution like Lifetime Fitness Cafes, Google Campus offices on Amazon. But at the end of the day, it was not the product line that was going to get us to where we wanted to be. And then we
When did you know that? When did you know that, by the way? When did you realize that this was not the product that kind of would actually take off?
It wasn't until we launched our second product line of our dessert cashew spreads
Oh.
that we saw such a strong tailwind for that one. And we're like, wow, this is a lot easier sell than our collagen protein bars. And look, protein bars are very hard to sell. And it's a very competitive, saturated category with players that have a lot of money. So as an emerging brand, it's really hard to carve out space for yourself. Even if you have a unique ingredient like collagen, it was so hard. And it felt like running up a hill with a backpack on. It was unnecessarily too hard. And when we launched the dessert cashew butters, we had this like blue vanilla frosting flavor. We had, this healthier version of a Nutella and just so much innovation. And it allowed us to see, oh, wow, this is what it looks like when a product really lands and hits with a consumer. And so once we saw that and juxtaposed it, then we're like, oh, wow, this collagen protein bar line should probably go because it's draining our resources. It's doing okay. But what if we were able to focus all of our resources onto this dessert spread line? And we were at that time bringing on some great advisors, one of them being Jared Smith from RX Bar, who also became an investor. And obviously, I'm going to respect his opinion because he had this massive exit with RX Bar and he had a really tough conversation with us. And he was just like, look, like your collagen protein bars are great, but you were running like two companies and they're so fragmented. They don't even feel related. And you're wasting your resources and spreading yourselves too thin. Cut the line. And we did a model, we ran the numbers, and he was right. And once we cut it, it was the best decision ever. And I like to joke that I'm not afraid to kill our first child. And it's and I think it's something that I'm so proud of and that we didn't have that ego around our product lines. If the numbers didn't make sense, we were ready to let it go. And I think a lot of founders struggle with an attachment that they feel to their products as if they're children, but at the end of the day, we have to run a business and it wasn't driving the numbers and momentum that we needed it to compared to the dessert cashew butters. And once we saw that, the decision was a lot easier to make. And so we did that in fall of 2023. And then the dessert cashew butters were taking off. They were doing a roadshow in Costco. They were getting rotations in Costco, growing like crazy. But behind the scenes, we were developing a protein brownie line that we knew was going to either be a smashing success or flop. We didn't know where it was going to go because it was so innovative, hadn't been brought out to the market. But we had this thesis that we built with the dessert cashew spreads of permissible indulgence, right? Where can the consumer have a sweet treat but not feel guilty about it, but it be lower in sugar or a little bit higher in protein or made with clean ingredients they can pronounce? And so the dessert cashew butters validated that thesis on permissible indulgence. And so behind the scenes, we were developing these protein brownies with that same idea to relate the product lines together and bring more unity and cohesion to our product platform set. And we developed the protein brownies and launched them rather quickly. And those then start to take off. And so it's just been momentum after momentum as we launch a new product line.
What's your approach? I mean, so you have the one product line, which is the collagen protein bars.
Mhm.
Then you launch the dessert cashew spreads. That takes off.
Mhm.
You kind of have a conversation of, hey, we're having, we kind of have, we're in two different categories.
Mhm.
These are kind of two different companies, and one of them is doing really well, and the other one is just doing all right. Let's cut the one that's just doing okay, which was the first one. Then you launch another set, which is the brownies.
Yep.
Was why why didn't you kind of say when you had the dessert, and obviously that was, the right decision
Yep.
with how well the protein brownies are doing. But was there any sense about when the dessert cashew spreads, when you just had that product line, that, hey, let's actually just focus on this one product line. Focus on one product line is hard enough. Why then innovate right now? Why don't we actually wait a little bit?
Our consumers. It was our consumers that drove the protein brownie line because they arguably were our consumers were asking us for a protein rich snack because once we discontinued the collagen protein bars, they're like, well, wait, we trust you guys as a brand. We know you guys create great products. We miss the bars. Will you bring something similar back or will you bring them back? And so we knew before the protein craze started to hit in 2024, 2025, that we needed to create a protein line. And who better than fitness instructors to bring this protein dessert line to market? But we wanted it to be the right product. Is we did a lot of market research behind the scenes. And so our consumers were the ones that were saying demanding this kind of product. And we knew in the back of our heads that it had to be something in the dessert category, not in the bar category. And we stumbled upon some fantastic RI data of another similar company that had a protein dessert and they had 700% growth in their first year. And seeing that data was the nail in the coffin for me of like, we need to move quickly. That was for me, we need to move something with protein ASAP because I saw the traction that they were experiencing. This was in 2024, 2023, excuse me. And so, yeah, that's how we knew it was a combination for consumers asking and then some data that validated some early signals. And then we were like, you know what? We have this advantage of being able to innovate quickly and listen to our consumer and iterate upon that. And so that's what launched the protein brownies. And we're like, let's try it because the cashew butters were doing great. You're right. Like, why would anyone add a second product line? But we had this feeling in the back of our head. And I think the founder intuition is such a strong voice to listen to. And so I'm really glad that we did because it just unlocks so much more growth for us.
I know you're a startup, so and every startup can innovate quickly, right? Because you're a startup, you're not big corporate. But
Yep.
what does it actually look like in terms of innovate quickly? Like, how does that work with like your co-mans and the entire supply chain? How do you actually innovate quickly?
There's a couple things. One, we don't have to answer to anyone or get any corporate sign off or approval. We can
Mhm,
move
mhm.
pretty
Just do it.
quickly from a test kitchen to a concept to prototyping to getting that consumer feedback right away. Yes, commercialization can take the longest time, but developing the flavors, developing the profiles, it first started with the concept and the idea, then the market research to validate it. Then from there, we found this incredible food scientist that we knew could help us push barriers because this product has never existed before. It's really, really hard to create a protein brownie that is gluten free. So you're dealing with a gluten free flour base that's baked, that is vegan. So you are limited in your protein, in your type of protein that you can work with. And that is very, very clean label. There's so many ingredients that I would not allow in a product. And so, with all those variables, our food scientist was like, this is not even possible. And so that's on you, the founder, to be like, well, let's try it and to push against what you think is possible, what a food scientist is telling you is possible, because you have to try to see beyond the status quo and go into that crazy innovation thinking mindset. And so from there, once you have a working prototype or a benchtop, then it's like, how do you find a manufacturer that can produce that product? And we hit a couple roadblocks in our first year trying to find that manufacturer. The first one nearly took all of our money and we almost like ran out of money because they were a partner that misled us. And then in the last hour, we were able to find someone to quickly make prototypes for sweets and snacks. And then at that same show, we met our current manufacturer. And at that same trade show, our Costco buyers met us and made the first order that completely changed the trajectory of our business. So I would say it's a
Sorry, made the first order, not for the brownies though, because that was still in R&D for the actual cashew spreads, right?
no, well, they made the order for our protein brownies.
Oh wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So it's
amazing.
only in market for a couple months before it started launching in 85 Costco locations. So it was a very rapid acceleration for that product line. So to kind of bring it all back of being able to move quickly, it's a couple things of, do you have founder operators that are able to push people, push the food scientists, push the food manufacturer, convince people to take a chance on their vision? Can you execute quickly in getting packaging and getting procuring the ingredients and in sourcing and vetting manufacturers? Like, having a lean team allows us to move very quickly in that capacity and just not take no for an answer and be able to convince people. We also had a track record with previous product lines that we knew what we were doing. It's not like we're, two young founders with no track record or experience. We had been doing this for like 4 or 5 years. And then that paired with just the sheer grit to move things quickly, because we knew we had something great and we wanted to get it to market as soon as possible.
It's amazing. How did you think about? I know that you got into Costco with protein brownies very, very quickly. Congratulations on that. And also, I mean, I know that they're selling like wildfire. It's incredible. Um, how did you overall, though, when you think about Elavi in the different stages? How did you think about route to market? Which retailers were the right retailers to partner with, or at least test? What was? How do you think about that and your different sales channels?
Yeah, such a great question. And I think it depends on the timing of where you're at in your business. And for us, all this was happening around like 2020, 2023, 2024. And when you go back and think about it at that time, that was an extremely difficult funding environment where a lot of investors were moving upstream. So there's barely any capital for early stage. And all of a sudden, there was this huge shift in the environment from going growth at all costs in 2020, 2021, when money was just being handed out like crazy to food and bev brands, to hit profitability. And that shift, we had already always been trying to hit profitability because we're first time founders, we're women, I'm a woman of color. So already nobody wanted to give us money. And we had all the odds stacked against us. So it's like, we have to hit profitability as soon as possible. You have to be thinking about our economics because we don't even have money to do grow at all costs. But at that time, the shift started to really, really materialize. And so we took a look at our business when all these things were happening. We discontinued a product line, we're developing a new product line. And we made a very clear decision of like, any channel we enter into has to be profitable. We have to make money. We don't have the luxury of burning for the first year and then we'll make some money or we can fundraise later. We had to make sure. And so that's how we figured out our market channel. Costco is a fantastic partner because you're able to, you know, scale up your volume, but also they pay you on time. They're a reliable partner. We're able to get inventory financing because Costco is the gold standard of a retailer. Whereas you see these other channels that they don't pay you on time, they don't pay you in full. And I've seen a lot of brands go out of business to try to fund those launches. And so we had this very deliberate channel strategy of only going after channels where we can make money because we needed to make money. And that's what drove everything.
So how did you get into Costco?
They discovered us at a trade show. So
Oh, right, sweet snacks, sweet snacks. But were you also in Costco at already with the dessert cashew spreads?
yes, so the dessert cashew spreads, I just cold pitched them honestly over email. And somehow they responded. I thought it was fake when I got a phone call from them. I didn't believe it at first. And they said, your email came across our desk. We'd love to try samples. And this was for our cashew butters. So I cold emailed them. The buyers got back to me within a few days. They tried samples, they liked it, and we did a roadshow to prove ourselves. And my co-founder Nikki and I hustled for that roadshow because we knew this was our one shot to get into Costco. If we could pull off great numbers, then we can potentially get in line to sell our products. And we put everything on the line. We did every single virtual ourselves. We set up, we took down, we sold for 12, 15 hours nonstop, didn't even eat. We're standing the entire time, barely took a bathroom break. And we were able to pull off incredible numbers to the point where our buyers were like, okay, we'll bring you in. So we did a couple rotations with our chocolate cashew butters. Amazing. But at that time, we were developing the protein brownies. And when we launched those numbers were incredible. They were also in a category that just has faster turns, stronger velocities, and we're selling at a higher price. And so when Costco saw these numbers, they were like, hey, we can't have too much of your business. There's this Costco concentration rule that they don't want to have 90% of your business. And they're like, you're going to have to pick. And so we chose the protein brownies to be our hero product in Costco. And we pulled back the cashew butters so that we could focus on a product line that was really taking off.
Wow. I can't believe Costco. Actually, you were so successful in Costco that you actually needed to make a decision on which product line you actually want to keep in Costco.
Yeah.
I I can't imagine how many times that happens. I'm sure it's very, very few.
It's truly surreal. And I think another reason why we were so successful in Costco is because we didn't distract ourselves with other retail channels that would have made it hard for us to go all in on Costco. We, of course, had D2C and Amazon and other channels that help diversify away from Costco. But from a retailer standpoint, we just wanted to give Costco our all. And that's what also led to such a strong partnership.
Well, how do you think overall when it comes to retail? I mean, obviously you are very concentrated in Costco, but how do you even think about other channels? Like, for example, would you only stay in mass? Does it make sense to even go in natural, or are you in natural, or kind of what are your what are your thoughts on channel diversification?
Yeah, I love diversifying our channels. And we use Costco as this very strategic springboard. Think of it as like a marketing channel, right? You're able to sample at scale, you're able to bring that legitimacy and credibility to the brand. And then I was able to leverage the Costco effect to get us into other channels. And so from day one, we always wanted to diversify away from Costco, and we continue to do so. And our buyers even support that. And so I was mentioning this before the call, but I cold emailed the Whole Foods buyer and got a response within a few hours. And it's a combination of me just shooting my shot, but also timing, knowing that protein is very hot and people wanted a permissible indulgent snack, but also having the track record with other retailers is what I think the buyers wanted to bet on too. So the Whole Foods buyer, a global buyer, already approved us for a national launch. And so we got that straight off the bat. But I want to develop more flavors before we launch nationally in Whole Foods, which we're going to do in May. So we started with one region for the past 5 months. And then now we're launching national with 3 flavors in the next 2 months. So the way I think about segmenting out is diversifying and making sure that we launch in the right time. So for Whole Foods, I didn't want to launch nationally until we raised a proper venture capital round, because the way that Whole Foods works is you work with a distributor. So you have to have someone else taking a cut of your pay essentially. And they don't always pay on time. They don't always pay in full. And so you have to be very mindful of your cash flow conversion cycle. And you have to be mindful of, it might not be profitable for the first 6 to 9 months, and the mechanics of working with the distributor and just the cost of doing business. And so knowing that and having great advisors that warned me about what it's really like to do business with your natural groceries of the world, I made sure that we raised enough capital to make sure that we were okay to pull off a national Whole Foods launch, to make sure we were okay to pull off a whole HEB launch in 250 locations. So it's all about timing too, which I don't think many people think about.
I think what's quite fascinating about this and makes total sense is I would say usually the first route to market for brands typically is a natural channel, and then you go mass, and then it's, are you going to excel in mass, right? Like, will this product actually work for the mass
Yeah.
consumer? But what's interesting from what you're saying in terms of the cash flow cycle and also raising,
Mhm.
you're actually fundraising to actually make sure that that you are successful in the natural channel. Whereas in Costco and mass, even though I'd imagine it's a lot more volume,
Mhm.
it actually, you actually don't need to raise, in your position as much money because in terms of the, because of the terms, your customer pays on time
Mhm.
and all these little things that really add up,
Mhm.
that you actually don't need to raise money, even though it's mass, mass retail.
Yeah. Yeah. Because think about it, you're direct. And when you
Yeah.
think about inventory financing, your lenders, you have to make sure that it's de-risked as much as possible. And there's so many horror stories with distributors not paying on time, not paying in full, deductions, chargebacks. Everyone in the industry knows it. And so that doesn't happen with Costco. Costco is like the gold standard. And so it's easy for us to get inventory financing from lenders for Costco so that we can profitably scale. And it also showed us as a business and it pressure tested us as a business. Can our operations handle this much? Can we procure this much? Can we, it just gave us better purchasing power for ingredients. And so it allowed us to get really, really dialed in our COGS, in our purchasing, in our demand plan, in production. And that's what I think also helped us as a business, which is pressure test the business of can we handle massive scale? And we did. And that's what makes entry points into other channels easier.
What learnings or insights do you get
Mhm.
within Costco? Obviously, you have your sales data, but
Mhm.
apart from that, how do you think about learnings of your customer through Costco or even other retail channels?
What's really unique about Costco is that they are such a demo heavy channel. Not many retailers require demos or have a very big demo program, but that's the culture of Costco is demos. And so I made it a point to do as many demos as I could to get in the field, talk to customers, see how we were merchandised, see the difference of merchandising, understanding the lingo, understanding the culture of Costco. So I embedded myself. I chatted with the staff. I asked them what performs well. I looked at all of our competitors in the competitive set. I looked at what was important for pricing architecture. If something is priced beyond this threshold, then a consumer might consider it too high. So I ingrained myself with Costco by being in the field, and those insights helped me understand not only that channel, but just on a broader level, how consumers think from a shopper marketing strategy, right? Consumers want to find something that they understand right off the bat. You don't want to have a consumer second guess something. So, can your packaging tell your consumer in 0.5 seconds what it is? And we've gone viral on a post on TikTok talking about how we broke the rules of packaging where we didn't have our logo big. We actually had protein brownie really big and prominent and then a Elavi on the bottom. And that focus really then allowed us to understand okay, the consumer just wants to know what it is. And can we create something that checks the boxes for them, whether it's calling up that it's gluten free or dairy free or sweetened with dates? And so that process of being in the field, talking to consumers, talking to the people in the store, talking to our buyers, and then letting that kind of be iterative allowed us to really think about okay, how do we continue to serve the consumer and create products that they will come back to again and again.
Do you do you think also, how do you think about packaging as well? I love that you have that call out from on the packaging. Protein brownie is the dominant, and Alavi is a lot smaller.
Mhm.
It seems like since you're building a new category, that it's really just the name of the category on the actual product itself, and then it's your logo. How do you think about that in terms of if a company, for example, is building a differentiated product in maybe the same category, if the branding should be more prominent? Like, if you have any thoughts in terms of how a brand should think about their brand versus the product that they're actually selling on the packaging.
What I love about CPG is that it's not a one size fits all approach. And you have to go with what you know, what your consumers resonate with. And you only know that by being in the field. And I would literally go stand in the aisles and I would ask consumers, why'd you pick that up? Why'd you put that down? What are you looking for? What are the gaps? I would look at Amazon reviews of our competitors, of our products, and look at what are patterns. And I think for an astute founder, pattern recognition is going to be your best friend. of understanding what are the key patterns that you're noticing and continue to listen to that. So for us, our patterns that we were noticing was consumers were flipping to the back. They want to look at the ingredients. So they cared about the calories, the protein count, all that. Then they looked at, what were the ingredients for our consumers, the conscious consumer. But also they like to have things simplified for them, right? You see in Costco and other retailers, people go up and scan things on apps to tell them if it's good or bad, right? People just want to be told at the same time what is good or bad or what is healthy. That's why influencers have amassed massive followings by going around into different retailers and saying, this is good, this is bad. People are so overloaded cognitively, and I think we all are too. And so I think it's also the simplification aspect that was a big insight for me too, just being in the field and just being a consumer myself, that the keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method is also a great guiding light.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's really helpful. How how did you think overall in terms of your fundraising strategy? I remember you mentioned in the early on that it was really hard. I mean, it seems like it's always really challenging fundraising
Yeah.
when I talk to founders.
Yeah.
But how did you think about when was the right time to fundraise? What were kind of the main reasons that you find getting turned down from the beginning?
Mhm.
And where are you at currently regarding what you're thinking about in the future when it comes to fundraising?
Yeah. I mean, looking back, look, this is my first time fundraising when you think about the Trigger company. I'm a first time founder. I also am a woman of color. And, this is my first time in this industry. So the odds were stacked against me. I knew that. And I think it's a combination of just having to effectively get metaphorically punched a million times and then just get back up. So you have to kind of build that thick skin because it really does just take one yes. But at the same time, you have to find your right investor at the right time. And I would encourage any entrepreneur to think about fundraising as a proper sales funnel, right? Think about it as like you're a salesperson. So you're qualifying your leads, you're building your CRM, you're, reaching out to them, identifying who's a cold lead, who's a warm lead, maybe you can get an intro, and you want to also get some reps practicing pitching. You don't want to just go to your dream investor when you haven't gone through the motions, anticipated questions that they would push back on. And you have to really just go back and continue refining based on feedback you're getting, but also not internalize any negative or rejections or anything that feels like it's personal. It's really not. And so for a fundraising strategy, I would say always start early, start before you need capital. Um, Make sure you get as many reps as you can before you start pitching to, your pool of dream investors. So pitch to angel investors, pitch to family offices, lower stakes funds and firms. And then I would also say try to build a really strong business first. When I was first fundraising, there were ideas just getting funded, and that has completely changed now. Unless you have a business that has strong unit economics or a clear plan, established traction, investors don't want to invest in an idea anymore, right? Everything has to be somewhat de-risked, and it depends on the type of investor. But mistakes I made was I would go after investors that were just not investing in my category, or they weren't investing at my size or stage, or they were investing in my category, but or they were, but no longer are. And you just have to accept that and just keep getting back up and understanding that markets can change. And so, what I wish I did earlier was just understand the market as a whole so that I wouldn't get beat up about an investor saying no. I'm like, well, maybe they just don't have money and it has nothing to do with me. Or maybe their LPs are saying, hey, stop investing in CPG, and that has nothing to do with me. And I wish I was more protective about my time. I would just take any call with anyone. And I wasn't qualifying the investors to find the right investors for me. But the investors that ended up, you know, uh, leading our Series A, they reached out to me. And I think that goes to show that if you build a strong business and you just focus on, of course, sharing your traction, and I also build in public too. And I share a lot on social media. And I think that puts us on radars of investors very easily. Then they will come to you. It's a lot like dating. You don't want to chase, you want to attract. And so I, for the first few years, was chasing and I was trying to get an investor. But at the end of the day, if I could go back and do this again, I would just focus more of my time on just building, sharing in public, and eventually people talk, people share. It's a very close knit community. You'll organically get noticed, and then the investors will reach out to you.
How love that advice. Love that advice. How do you think as well around the trajectory? I know you're now going to be launching nationwide in Whole Foods, which is incredible. So if you shop at Whole Foods, definitely pick up the the protein brownies. But how do you think about overall the trajectory of Elavi and as well as um, the hamster wheel that can be venture capital, right? Where you raise a venture round, raise a Series A, then you raise Series B, and you kind of keep going. Now, I know as well as it's looking at the opportunity and the size of the opportunity you have. And if you think that it's a massive opportunity, then it makes a lot of sense to raise a lot of money to be the kind of maybe first to market and to capture the opportunity. But how do you think about over the overall trajectory when it comes to fundraising, size of business that Alavi can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the term hamster wheel is really funny, but it's what you make of it. And when we were raising, and like I said earlier, like we didn't have the luxury to build this growth at all cost business. So from day one, we were always
I do you think if you did have the luxury to build a growth at all cost business, right?
Mhm.
Would would you have done it?
It's so hard to say because that wasn't my experience. So it's hard to imagine that scenario that wasn't handed to me. In some ways, maybe because all my peers, there were other brands in our pre-seed round portfolio that did the growth at all costs and they crashed and burned and they went out of business. So look, blessing in disguise that we didn't have as much access to capital as other brands did in 2021 because yeah, how can you not? Like you have all this money, so don't you want to spend it? And there's investors that are expecting 4 or 5x growth and they're expecting tech multiples. And it's really hard not to get caught up in that. And I think there's a maturity level of a founder and CEO that I've grown into years 3, 4, 5, 6 that I didn't have in my first early years to push back on an investor and be like, hey, that's great that you want that, but I'm going to be real with you and honest with you that like that's not going to happen. But I will deliver a 2.5, 3x healthy growth that is going to put us on a path to profitability. I think it's very hard as a founder to be able to push back against your investor and set expectations properly and to not just say, yes, I'll do that, and I'll raise more later. So it's hard to answer that question because it's like that you can always postulate on what would have been, but I always like to say, look, blessing in disguise, everything happens for a reason. And thank goodness, because it forced us to be extremely disciplined. Look at every single line item on our P&L and treat every single dollar with such scrutiny that it forced us to be extremely, extremely hands-on and just say no to a lot of things. And I think this was your podcast. Melissa Ficina from City Capital said this, and it landed with me. Pick one retailer to be your vanity account where it looks good, it looks nice, and then every other retailer to be profitable and make sure you're looking at your numbers. And that stuck with me early. That was such great advice. And I love that discipline. And I'm glad that we carried that discipline and to kind of round out this whole response of this hamster wheel. I'm going to build it. We're on path to build a profitable company. We're almost at EBITDA positive. And if you have that discipline and that clear line of sight from day one, you start saying no to things that just sound nice and start just always coming back to that number. I'm like, what's going to get us to profitability? What's going to get us to profitability? And that discipline is our North Star.
Well, so I love that advice from Melissa. What is your vanity retailer then? Because it seems like Costco is your vanity retailer, but at the same time, it's also maybe your most profitable retailer as well, right?
I'll share with you offline because I don't want to like call them out
Oh, okay.
before our vanity retailer is. But it's basically a vanity retailer is like, you're not making a ton of money, but it looks good to be in that account. And so you're just going to be in there because it builds brand credibility. It like, you know, build like that authority in the space. And while it might not bring in a ton of money, it's good for the brand. So I think of that as our vanity like brand account. And the other accounts, I literally tell my brokers, I'm like, I will run a full P&L analysis on any retailer you bring me. And if it doesn't hit profitability, then I don't want to launch in them. And so that discipline is very much in our DNA.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really, really cool. That's really cool. And I'm surprised that it's not Costco. So that makes also
Also, is a great brand, like a great partner. I could not recommend them more. They're like such a fantastic retailer. But I like to also caution entrepreneurs and founders that they can help you as much as they can hurt you. And if you're not prepared to handle the volume, the scale, the expectations of a Costco, don't do it or wait. Because yes, it's very shiny and it's a fantastic partner to work with. They're so dialed. But at the same time, you get one shot and you don't want to mess it up. And so I always like to caution founders of like, I know we make it look easy at Elavi and we've experienced great success, but it's also a lot of behind the scenes that you're not seeing of how hard we're hustling.
Has there ever been a retail launch? And you don't have to mention the retailer if not, but any retail launch that actually, looking back, you shouldn't have gone inside a retailer or launched at that moment in time?
Yes, and I don't want to out them out publicly.
Mhm.
But yeah, we pulled ourselves out. And that was during the 2023 shift where we were looking at our P&Ls and we're like, where are we losing money? And we cut ourselves out of retailers and partners that were just bleeding us capital and it looked nice to be on. And we had 5 vanity retail accounts. And so we had to trim it down to 1 at a time. And it can shift. Like one year it could be this retailer's your vanity account. And then you get it to profitability and it's great. And then you like layer on a new vanity retailer account. So it kind of also depends. But yeah, there's several that I mean, if a founder wants to DM me privately, I'm happy to know. I don't want to like have this retailer come after me.
What and in terms of what went wrong, we're not gonna name names, but in terms of what went wrong, just for learnings, what what did kind of go wrong? Was it just that it wasn't profitable, that it wasn't kind of the right channel? Like what actually made it not the right channel?
Yeah, it was just too expensive. The price of entry was too expensive. And unfortunately, you when you're an early stage brand, you just want to say yes to everything. And you're just so excited to get even a yes that you just say yes and figure it out later. And I commend that and I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, you have to build a business. And so this particular one retailer, they had really high slotting fees. They had huge marketing expectations. And just the number of stores that they had couldn't justify paying that much to be in. And so it's really just it's a simple math equation. What we're doing in CPG, it's not rocket science. I was chatting with my friend Sandro from Sanzo, and you're chatting about something. He was just like, "What we're doing is not rocket science, Michelle. Like it's really just numbers when you drill it down of like just analyzing things." And that really just clicked for me, and I totally resonate with that. So it's like, can you do the disciplined work of removing the excitement and the ego and the emotions of entering into a retailer and do the simple math of like, what does it cost? How much are they expecting me to pay? How much am I expecting to receive in actual payables? And does this make sense over 6 months, 12 months? At what point will I make my money back? And if it's longer than a year, then that's a question for you to ask yourself, can you handle that, not making money in an account? And so if you have extra cash in the bank, okay, and you can justify it, great. But if you're struggling to fundraise or, you're just trying to be as profitable as possible, then you have to say no and focus on channels that you can get bigger wins in sooner.
I know you're right now in 2 different categories. Do you want to enter a third category? Is there still innovation to go in a third, or is it really focusing on the protein brownies?
Right now, we're just scratching the surface with the protein brownies. We
Mhm.
currently have 3 flavors in market. We're launching 2 more in the next few months. we're launching an exclusive with Whole Foods, and we are exploring new form factors. And so there's so much already to do with the protein brownies that I feel confident for the next 2 years focusing on that. But look, if there is an innovation opportunity that our consumers are driving, kind of the same way with the protein brownies, they're asking for something and there's a clear market gap and there's data and insights showing me that this hasn't been done before. Absolutely, I'm happy to explore that. But there's also, like I said, there's a beauty in the simplicity. Great example is Chomps, 500 million plus business, and they're focusing on meat sticks and they're able to keep their supply chain super dialed. They're profitable. They're doing such an amazing job building a love brand. So you don't have to keep iterating and innovating a million different product lines because that spreads your team thin, that spreads your supply chain wider, that makes it more things for you to keep track of, more category reviews, more, channels to think about. So to answer your question directly, I'm not saying no, but not right now.
Supply chain wise, for your two different product lines, is it the same supply chain or similar, or is it completely different when it comes to co-packers and everything like that?
There is some overlap from ingredients and making sure manufacturing is dialed from like a team standpoint as well. But then there's of course like just different differences in packaging, differences in ingredients. Not everything overlaps, but we do source every single ingredient, and that's been important for me from day one. I do not recommend turnkey for brands because at the end of the day, you need to have that direct supplier relationship with all of your ingredients because you're going to be the ones that can better negotiate for your behalf. You're going to be the ones that can better inspect it for quality, for QA, quality assurance, and you're going to have more visibility into everything. And so we source all of our ingredients. We try to source domestically as much as possible, and we produce in the United States as well. So have such a we carry that discipline about channel strategy, about packaging into our operations and supply chain because that literally is, the core of our business and making sure that we have backup suppliers, making sure that we're consistently investing in team members that can just level up our ops and supply chain procurement, demand planning. And that's what I'm focusing on right now, which is really exciting as a leader to build out that team. So yeah, it's such an exciting area to get into the business. While it's not sexy, it's so critical and yeah, it's just constant learnings.
So it seems like that's incredible. Um, it seems like protein's everywhere these days in all sorts of different categories. Has that been a massive tailwind for you all?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we launched the protein brownies in May of 2024. So the protein craze started to hit 2025. So we're able to ride that beautifully. And protein is never going to go away, right? It's just having this renaissance and this excitement about it. What I find really interesting is that for the first time, women are now outnumbering men in seeking more protein. And that is something that I am rapidly paying attention to. And then you pair that with the fact that over 80% of purchasing decisions are made by women. And you walk the Costco aisle, you look at the protein bar set, Mike, we are the only one that's women owned.
Wow,
It's crazy.
that's amazing.
And
That's
so
amazing.
and
That's
so
amazing.
when you
Yes,
think
you.
about the consumer, she's seeking protein. She wants a brand that she can trust. And to see a brand that is created not only by women, but women fitness trainers who are in their 30s who understand, what she's going through. She is busy. Maybe she has kids. Maybe she is like trying to get healthier on her fitness journey. Maybe she's on GLP-1. That female consumer who's 25, 30 plus, who might be perimenopause, who might be going through menopause, who is looking for something that is sweet and indulgent because she has a sweet tooth, but she also wants to get more protein so she can feel full and good about what she's consuming. That consumer is so underserved because right now a lot of the protein bar snack products are targeted towards men, targeted towards more is more. And for our consumer, she's looking for quality protein. She's looking for, is this naturally sweetened? Is this going to digest properly? Is this going to not make me feel bloated? Our top ad is basically talking about how our protein brownies don't make you feel bloated. And I think women are so attuned with their bodies and how they feel and more conscious of that versus a guy, he probably doesn't know he's bloated, right? Or maybe he doesn't care. But our consumer, she's so hypersensitive. And so she could find a product that does give her protein and fiber and doesn't upset her stomach and nourishes her and energizes her through different stages of life, whether she's breastfeeding or trying to conceive. That's where I get really excited, is to create a product with so much integrity in a space that historically is not creating products with integrity, is just trying to cheapen and create the lowest quality product with the highest profit margin. That's where I feel there's an opportunity for us to really bring innovation and take significant market share.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense, and that's it's just amazing. Um, just amazing that congratulations. That's just very, very cool. Um, with everything you've learned and everything that you've accomplished so far with Elavi, what's one thing you do completely different in the first year?
If I was to go back, what would I do differently?
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, in my first year, I would not. Here's what I would do, and here's what I wouldn't do. I would not waste time chasing investors. I would just focus on building, on listening to a consumer, on trying to create the best product for them. I think it gets so tempting to want to take an investor call or go out and fundraise and chat with investors or try to get money, save up money beforehand to give you that luxury to build and to just be so in the build with your product and with your consumers. And I wish I didn't have that distraction in the first year because I thought, let me just build something and then in 6 months I'll go out. And that was a distraction. So I think protecting my time was a lesson that took me a while to get to. It took me several years. And if I could go back and tell my younger self, you have to be protective of your time because that is something you don't get back. What I would also do is I would be online more and share more publicly and build in public. I think the first year or two, that was right when TikTok was just coming out. It was so weird to be a brand on TikTok. Everybody was just dancing and lip syncing. And so there wasn't that storytelling and virality like you see now. I think Allison from Poppy was the first big brand that really jumped on there and made it okay. But I wish I did more storytelling, more behind the scenes. You're seeing a lot of brands take off now building on the backs of the Allisons at Poppy because, she was the first, matriarch of really storytelling. And I wish we did that more. I think we were just so afraid of sharing information. I don't know why we were so paranoid, but there's also this kind of, you don't want to be cringe and you just kind of get over it at a certain point. So I wish we shared more behind the scenes because you have this very sweet time in this first year where you're this underdog and you have all the odds stacked up against you. That's why Shark Tank is such a successful show, is people like to cheer on the newbie, the up and coming brand. And so I wish we leaned more into that. We just posted a lot of photos of people holding the products and I'm like, that doesn't do anything for people. People have to feel connected. People want to hear a story. So I wish I got on the camera more and just story told and shared a little bit more and built more in public because you're seeing these brands that are just taking off because they are doing that right away. So that's what I would do differently.
No, I love that, because it's so interesting too, just on the social media side, how many brands that's become a huge part of their strategy, and gosh, they've done amazing with it.
Yeah.
Thinking about, like, I had on Katie Wilson from Belly Welly and what they've done on TikTok, and then, of course, Midday Squares,
Mhm.
and it's just it's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. At the
Great.
end of the day, people want to be told stories. They don't want to be sold to. And that landed with me about year 2, year 3. And that's when I really started doubling down on our social media strategy. And it's only been beneficial to us where retailers would reach out to us or when they do their diligence on brands, they look at your social media. They look to see how do you drive consumers to their stores. And so that becomes such a big part of the strategy is how do you support your retailers? How do you build the community? How do you stand out? And having a strong social media presence, being able to storytell, being able to connect with your consumers, that ultimately is what sets you apart. That's your IP. That's your brand, right? If you want to get an acquisition down the road, you have to be able to sell the brand, right? And so I think it's no longer an option. I think it's table stakes to build a social media following and to build a strong social ecosystem.
How do you think about founder? I mean, I think the examples that we're talking about, in many ways, it's mostly it's also founder led brand, right? Where the founders are the one doing the posting. That you're actually getting to know the founders and behind the scenes through the lens of the founder and what they're thinking. How do you think predominantly that's kind of the route to success for today?
I think it's the faster, cheaper route. I'm not saying that you can't build a great best in class brand by not being in front of your company, by not being on social, by not being in front of the camera. You absolutely can. There's some great brands that don't do that. But I think it's faster. I think it's more cost efficient than running a ton of ads. And look, like maybe you can bring in someone else to be the face of your brand, but I think people need to connect to a human nowadays. When you go to a website, I don't know about you, but I always go to the Our Story or About Us page because I want to be like, who is this? And who's running this behind the scenes? And especially now in this world of AI, we're so skeptical of is this even real that people are craving humans more and more, like to validate, like, is there someone actually here? Right. Or is this because you can vibe code so many things now. You can build a whole website with AI. You can build personas with AI. And it's kind of crazy when you think about it. So I think in this day and age that we're shifting to, having that real authentic credibility is also going to help you build your brand in this next era that we're going into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, on the AI front,
Mhm.
how do you leverage AI or use AI? I'd imagine you're not using it for videos per se, but the but how do you think about AI in terms of utilizing it and kind of leveraging it to make your life easier?
I just posted about this and it went viral about how I broke up with ChatGPT and I went to Claude instead. And I'm obsessed with Claude. I am very impressed with its co-work feature. I'm very impressed with just its analytical properties. I put in, sales spreadsheets to look at patterns and help me understand our sales velocities. I have it double check, you know, a pitch deck and kind of test against like what my assumptions are about certain things. I have it be kind of my thought partner or sounding board of like, hey, here's a strategy. I have it help me think through like hiring. I've had it create a full blown, onboarding 30, 60, 90 plan. I've had it almost replace certain functions that would take me so long. I use it as a research partner. If I'm thinking through different ingredients or product formulas or innovation, I like to pressure test certain things. I use it just to do like basic research on things, but also from a like kind of like this chief of staff almost to kind of be this person. And you can create a project within Claude. And I uploaded essentially my founder brain. It's like my founder operating system. And I put here my brand guidelines. Here's the retailers that we're in. Here's like how I think about the brand. Here's XYZ so that it has all this context already about me. And I'm not just chatting generally, but it could really go deep with me and have so much context around me. So I absolutely love it. It helps me with content ideas. If I want to think through like a whole content strategy and a calendar of how I want to plan like a Whole Foods launch post, I'm like, what are the different ways that I can plan this? If I want to plan an event, I'm like, what are the different things that I should be thinking about when I'm launching an event to launch XYZ? So it's become such a game changer. And I always joke about, man, think about how much more powerful we would have been if we had Claude and AI, even 3 years ago. So it's completely changed the landscape. It's allowed me to respond faster to emails, not spend an hour editing things, and just be me, but a more efficient me.
Got it. Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. I actually also agree with you on Claude. I think that it's amazing. Um And yeah, I don't really use ChatGPT
What do you
as
think
much
you use
anymore.
Claude for?
It's a good question. I haven't used it nearly as um in the level that you've used it. I've talked to though another founder and he manages like his entire business through Claude, essentially. And it's a CPG company. So I thought that was out when I was in Austin like 2 months ago. I had that conversation. So they started just kind of fiddling around with Claude
Yeah.
and working on building on a couple of things on like the VC side of things. Like just data, like who's fundraised, what kind of doing some organization around that. But yeah, I mean, it's all just so amazing, the technology that's available today.
Yeah. No, it's great at processing spreadsheets. So for instance, when you get like data from, let's say, a week of sales at HEB, and then
Mhm.
I want to translate that into a strategy to send to my merchandising team of like, hey, here are the stores that have voids, here are the stores that have had low performance in this flavor, and then it can translate over a strategy that I can share with them. So it takes out an hour or two for me to go through spreadsheets and pull out different data and patterns and trends, and it just synthesizes that for me in minutes.
No, yeah, no, I think that was very similar to what this other entrepreneur was saying about how he looks through a lot of his sales data through Claude, and it's been the insights that he's been able to find, even on the projection side and on the modeling side. It's been really helpful.
Yeah. It can almost,
Yeah.
like, delay having to make these hires, so it keeps your OpEx down. So from a profitability standpoint, I think it's killer to think about your business like that.
Yeah, no, totally. There is, Yeah, I'm right now chatting with another company who I think only has, like, 3 full-time employees, and the amount of revenue that they've been able to do just and everything else is kind of just by just using AI to fill the responsibilities, and it's incredible how they've been able to grow. So it really is amazing just what you can do with with technology on the ops side,
Yeah.
for
Yep.
sure. Um, what is what's one book that's inspired you personally and one book that's inspired you professionally?
I love this question. A book that has inspired me personally is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And if you're familiar with Mel Robbins, she's just such an inspiring person
Yeah.
herself. Just her story of how she, went through bankruptcy, so much debt, and then she turned her whole life around at a later age too, which I think is inspiring because so much in our narrative and zeitgeist is like 30 under 30, building as an entrepreneur in your 20s. And, I'm in my 30s and I find it really inspiring that people can reinvent themselves and start over in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, and that it's never too late. But specifically about the let them theory, as a founder, you go through so much rejection. You go through so many people downing you, and sometimes people patronizing you. Sometimes people, speaking condescending to you, and people that will put you down or not understand what you're doing. It could even be family members that mean well, but they might discourage you from starting a business because they view it as unsafe or unstable. And I think the let them theory is such a great concept to easily not attach emotion or a connection to people saying anything or doing anything, and to let them think the way they think or do whatever they want to do and control your own world. I think it's so important as an entrepreneur to think about and preserve and protect your mental structure, and to make sure that you are in your conviction about what you're building. And so the let them theory is all about like, let them say or do whatever, and let me focus on me and what I can control and what I do want to do. And so I think that's such a great value and kind of a way to kind of orient your life just to kind of protect yourself against, naysayers or just yeah, the very expected experience of rejection is going to happen. Um, and then a professional book that has inspired me is Bobby Brown's book, Just Bobby. It's like her memoir about how she built this $1 billion brand, exited to Estee Lauder, and all the while she raised 4 kids, which is insane. And life didn't stop for her.
Wow.
And it's so hard to put all of your life into your business and to not take vacations and to not enjoy yourself and just to grind and grind and grind for a maybe later payout. And her book inspired me professionally to try to seek joy and enjoy myself and enjoy the journey, and that life can still happen while I'm building a business. And also her crazy story about how she had a 25-year non-compete, and she thought, oh, I'm not going to start a new company in my 60s, and then she ends up doing it, right? So just her story on resilience and pivoting, and the fact that she has worked with like some of the most famous celebrities, politicians, people that are just iconic. And she has so much humility around her. And she actually posted about her product. She discovered us at a Lifetime Fitness gym, and she posted her products, and I posted it on my stories, and I'm like, oh my God, I love Bobby. She's iconic. And I had so many people DM me saying, Bobby is like the sweetest person. She's so nice. She's so humble. She made me feel so seen. And the fact that this woman who had $1 billion exit, who has worked with celebrities, who built such an amazing brand, is so nice and so kind, that so many people have had similar like experiences of her being just such a humble person, that inspired me professionally too. Of you can be this big person, but still make sure that everyone feels seen, from, an associate to a model to whatever. Like every person that you work with and interact with we're all equal, right? It doesn't matter if you have $1 billion exit. So that inspired me as a leader of how to think and be around other people. And that, yeah, I think things can always change, but it's really how you respond to it. And her story of resilience is it's very inspiring.
That's amazing. I'm so happy you shared these 2 books. I don't think we've had anyone in the past share these 2 books. I definitely need to read them. I really enjoy listening to Mel Robbins' podcast.
Yeah.
And yeah, Bobby as well. I mean, she's so inspiring. Really excited to add it to the list. Um, Michelle, this was well, has there ever was there, speaking of the let them theory, was there ever a period during during Elavi that the noise maybe got to you too hard, that you thought, hey, you know what? Or the just the strain of being an entrepreneur overall, doesn't mean you be outside noise. Was there ever a moment that you felt, you know what? I'm actually gonna walk away?
I've had some close calls where I was sacrificing my health, and this is from someone who health is such a strong pillar for.
Yes, exactly. And that's the reason why you started the company to begin with.
Right, right. So just like this was like such a contradiction, that it's like I'm not eating well, I'm not working out, I'm not moving my body, I'm not getting enough sleep, and here I am trying to sell this product and help people eat healthier, and I'm not living, the brand that I'm air quote selling. So yeah, I've had a lot of close calls. It was during like fundraising cycles where, it takes so much out of you because you have to show up online, be the face of the brand, but then also, take a hit behind the scenes, and something might be happening with production and you have to put out fires, and then you jump on a call and pitch to an investor, and then they call your child ugly, and you just rinse and repeat over and over again, and you don't have, that ability to kind of ground yourself because it just feels like you're pulled in a million different directions. um, I think some great advice that my partner, my boyfriend, told me is like, he's like, okay, like just go through the scenario. Like, what would happen if you quit? And it kind of like forced me to pause for a second. And I was just like, huh, what would happen? And and then I would go through the exercise of it, of like him kind of like calling me out of like, okay, like go ahead and quit. Like, what would happen? And where I got myself, I'm like, I would miss it. I would want to come back in. I would want to like, as like as difficult and as painful as some of the experiences are part of being an entrepreneur, I love it. I love being able to call the shots. I love being able to move things quickly. I love, the thrill of building. And I love, how every day is different and that I grow more and more as a person and that I've evolved so much and that I can help people and create a product that actually helps people with their health journey. And so that reframe was super helpful because I'm just like, at the end of the day, this is what I love. I chose this. I'm excited to do this. This is really fulfilling for me. And so that helped me kind of snap out of it. I'm like, I'm just exhausted. I just need to sleep. I just need to eat. Like, I just need to fit my basic needs. And once I do that, then that means, okay, I just needed to like take a breather. I really don't feel that way. Is the kind of take home message is like that wasn't actually how I was feeling. I was just exhausted and burnt out. And my advice to founders to get ahead of that is, which is crazy to say, and probably no one has given this advice, is to find opportunities to push yourself beyond your limits. Usually that'll be working out. So maybe it's like sprinting or weightlifting or doing hot yoga. Can you train your brain to get to areas where you feel like you're going to give up, but then you push through and then you make it on the other side? Because from a neuroscience perspective, when you're thinking about neuroplasticity, founders, entrepreneurs are literally going against evolutionary biology, right? We're going against what's safe, what's certain, what's secure in pursuit of something dangerous, scary, unknown. And so to practice and continually rewire your brain to optimize for uncertainty, unknown, for pushing past limits, the more experiences you have showing your brain, I can do that and I can overcome it and I survive on the other side, the stronger your mental resilience will be to get ahead of burnout. Because really, burnout is where you feel overwhelmed, where you feel like you can't keep going, where you want to just give up. Right. And so, if you can practice in other moments outside of building your business, whether it's working out or pushing yourself physically, that's where you can rewire your brain and prove to yourself on a psychological level, I can push past hard things, I can do hard things, and you take that with you into your entrepreneur life so that you already know I can do hard things. And so that's some advice that I would give that has really helped me.
I love that advice, and yes, I don't think I've actually heard that advice before. And that was awesome. That was great. Um, wow, that's so cool. And also I love that advice from her boyfriend as well, saying, "What if you like? Okay, just put yourself in that shoes. What if you actually were not? What if you actually did step away and actually seeing what the business would be like without you?" Which is crazy to think about. Um, yeah, Michelle, this has been so much fun. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Thank you.